so lonely without you.
I didn't hear you for a minute. I got scared.
I forgot to unmute myself.
Yeah, I have missed everybody. I did my stream yesterday, and it was so good to be back. And I think I'm almost done being jet lagged. I think I know what time it is now. I struggled with that for a hot minute.
I mean, you're on time, so
Yeah.
I didn't have to drag you by your toes. You made it here. I'm not gonna lie, it was lonely without you. It was lonely without all our friends. Hi, LJ. So I'm glad you're back for selfish reasons.
It's good to be back.
And we will make sure not to take up a bunch of time with England stories today, because let me share my screen. We can talk all about London shenanigans on Saturday. Boy, you really came home to a full schedule, didn't you?
I sure did. 4 streams in 1 week.
Yeah, at least we're gonna make sure that like you're not like bored after having such a jam-packed like 10-day trip. But yeah, we've got a Stitch and Glitch on Saturday at 2. And you know, if there's any new friends in the audience, we usually go anywhere from like 2 to 3 hours, depending on how much food we talk about,
how hungry we get.
yeah, like if there's chicken sandwiches or not. So yeah, we get together at 2 p.m. Eastern live on our YouTube, and that would be a good day for Stephanie to tell us.
Yeah, I actually saved some.
Juicy details.
Yeah, I actually have saved something as sort of a unboxing. I showed it yesterday on my my stream, but I have not yet actually opened it, and it's kind of a fun, silly little thing that. Yeah, I thought I would open it during that. So
that will be fun. And then next Tuesday, we have our author interview with Laurie LaBar. So that's going to be really exciting. If you have questions that you want, you can obviously bring them live that night if that works for you, or you can email them to us at quiltnerding@gmail.com. And we can get those off to Laurie. And then also don't forget to always check the video description, because you'll find things in there like our affiliate link to get the Maine Quilts book if you decide that you want it after, you know, hanging out with us while we're reading it and stuff like that.
Hey, Esther.
And hi, Esther. Just stop like sharing my screen in order to see things. So the interview will be super fun. They're really fun. I never realized how fun they would be. At first, I was really nervous about them, but they're really fun.
Yeah, they are. They are. And I think it's just especially like we're lucky that we do know so many fun people who have written books, and that they're kind enough to come and talk to us.
Oh, we're really fun too. Thanks, Esther. It's good to know it wouldn't be as fun without us.
Yeah. So, are there any other announcements, or we can get into some Maine Quilts?
Yeah, I don't have anything else. And one thing that we do have to remember is we did not last time discuss chapter 7 because we got really bogged down with discussing chapter 6 and looking at. We listened to part of an interview, a radio interview. That Laurie had done online. So go back and look at part 4 if you haven't watched that.
It was like the local radio station, right? Or like a Maine radio station. But I thought it was a really great interview because the interviewer, the radio personality, I guess she's a reporter or whatever, she knew about quilts. She was a creative person, so she asked very smart questions, and I think it was a really good interview. So
yeah. So let's get a move on with chapter 7 here, which starts on 151 for anyone opening their book. And the last 2 chapters here is really getting into the 20th century and then into really modern stuff.
Present, yeah, the present.
So there's not. I'm just looking to see if there's anything I particularly flagged. Go ahead if you've got something.
Well, I'm looking back because I finished my my chapter 8 reading. I did not do that before I went on my trip, but I of course had read chapter 7, and now I'm looking at things I used my highlighter tape for, and I'm like, I don't know what this was. This was like 3 weeks ago. I don't remember why I highlighted this.
And this is why I take physical notes.
So, on page 151, she mentions, bottom of the first paragraph, by 1910, the two Maines of today were already defined as population services and lines of transportation concentrated in the south coastal areas and major manufacturing centers just inland. So, to be clear, she's talking about sort of like the two Maines being like kind of the two focuses of the regions, right? Like, did I read that correctly?
I was going to say, are you asking me or telling me?
I'm sort of asking because, reading through here, she is talking about like kind of the industrial, changes, and I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. Like,
I am not clear on it.
Okay. Maybe we should ask her. It's not like we don't have access to her next week.
Well, see, here's the thing. Like, I think you're probably correct because that paragraph is talking about how quickly things start changing in Maine.
Yeah.
But I am not 100% sure, and there's no note on that sentence. So.
Right. Yeah.
So Esther just said the state split into developmentally.
Oh, okay. I forget. It's Esther's a Mainer.
In Maine.
Yeah. So okay. So I guess what you're saying is there's like this like super modernization in some areas where you've got cars and electricity and all that jazz, and then you still have this like sort of more rural Maine, I guess. And I mean that exists today, right? I mean there's a large portion of Maine that's rural, correct?
Well, given some of the other context clues here, talking about like electricity and things like that, I think that's probably a correct assessment.
3 years in the state doesn't make you a Mainer. What are the rules in Maine? Like, I know in New York, you're not allowed to call yourself a New Yorker until you've lived there for 20 years, I think somebody told me. And you become a Baltimorean as soon as you have Maryland license plates. Like,
they call you Baltimoreans? Wow.
Yeah. I'm not a native. I don't accept that term. My son is a native, though, so... Okay, yeah, 60% of the state population's in the south of the state, yeah. Because it's cold and rural in the north, right?
Maine's people forget that Maine is a big state. I think it could be somewhere like 5 hours tip to tip.
Yeah. And I know that that coastal area, like around Portland, where we'll be going soon, I know that's very popular. I mean, I've sort of been in there, and I mean, I know there's lots of tourism, and it's just a lovely part of the state. So
Esther says it takes 3 to 5 generations to be a Mainer. That's just ridiculous.
That's too funny. Hey, Arlene. In California, you're a transplant. Your husband is a native, yeah. And you've been there for 47 years. Yeah, some states are very serious about their natives versus their, you haven't been here long enough even though you've been here for 100 years. I get it. I know. I understand.
People often think I am not born and raised in Massachusetts and only 13 miles outside of Boston because I don't have the accent. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I don't park my car in Harvard Yard and paid me in $1. Like,
so.
And I'm glad I don't have that accent. So.
Yeah, I'm glad you don't either. I'd have to punch you. No offense to the Massachusettsians who have that accent, like, whatever. So back to Maine Quilts. I think it was, just looking at the quilts that are illustrated here, I mean, they're very much, I think, the same kind of quilts that were being made nationwide during the Depression. it feels like, there's a lot of unique things about some of the older Maine quilts, but it does seem like, I guess, I mean, really, as more industrialization and certainly probably more connection nationwide, I think it seems like quilters were picking up on kind of what was in the social strata of quilters, like these Depression era standards, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, One thing I found interesting, and this is not really specific to Maine, of course, other than the fact that it's held by the Maine Museum, page 154, that McCall's printed pattern.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have a couple of McCall's patterns from that era, and it says the company included instructions in French and Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I actually expected that to have been something that happened more recently.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, again, like, there was a French population in Maine. So I
Mm-hmm.
could see how these McCall's patterns, if, say, other pattern companies did not print in other languages, I could see how this might be, this was something that may have been popular with, French-speaking community, in many
Mm-hmm.
states. I think there's lots of those states that are kind of northeast, close to Canada, did have French populations because of the,
Mm-hmm.
influx of people, at certain times. I just thought that was really interesting. And I mean, Spanish, like, you just don't think of the Northeast or really much of the U.S. having connection to much Spanish speaking, except for the southern states like the Southwest and Florida. At this time period, I just, and this might just be my ignorance as far as, what immigration looked like in the early 20th century, that would have impacted, a pattern company. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I just kind of assumed, like, Spanish speaking immigrants, whether from Spain or from South America, feels like more modern. And I mean, I guess it's just because the politicalization of our current immigration situation. But I guess I never thought of things being bilingual until, like, closer to now.
I mean, I didn't think of things being bilingual, but for much more racist history than that.
Yeah.
Because this is the 1930s. We don't get we don't even, we don't get the civil rights movement for like another like 30 some odd years here and like things like that. We definitely don't have we're definitely not like giving a poop about anything to do with like accessibility for people.
Mm-hmm.
And things like that. I wasn't even considering the geography about about where people are coming in from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I mean, obviously, again, McCall's is a nationwide company, so it's distributed. Even, let's see, 1935, it's distributed nationwide, even at that time. So they're probably taking into consideration that there are Spanish-speaking populations in Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, Florida, and maybe some around the Gulf Coast. But the combination of French and Spanish, again, like, we don't have to.
Yeah, my guess would have been something like from the marketing department.
Yeah, yeah.
Making sure that you can reach all kinds of other people during that time period. I had just held up, I don't know if you were looking up or not, the quilt that Jenny L. Gagnon from Benton, Maine made in 1935.
From this pattern?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, it says right here, it says Jenny Gagnon of Benton was a nurse trained in Massachusetts. She had 2 teenage boys at home when she made this quilt, using a pattern published by the McCall Company. She went back to work sometime between 1930 and 1940 at the Tuberculosis Sanitarium in nearby Fairfield, Maine. One imagines that she made the quilt before she returned to a full-time job as a nurse. The overall color scheme of her quilt was similar to that suggested on the front page of the pattern envelope, but the colors she chose were softer, and she chose to secure the quilt with ties rather than quilting. One thing I have to comment here is an overall, because obviously, like, we're getting into the more modern periods here, so it's a lot more common to have names and history and provenance attached to quilts. But I have to say that all the books we've read so far, that are bringing in pieces of work. This is the first, obviously, one that focuses on a state, but um, Maine really seems to have kept a lot of provenance intact. When you think
Yeah.
about how many quilts we have talked about uh tied to people's names,
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
or a group of names, or a sewing circle, or a fundraiser or something, like, I feel like most often it's always a maker unknown scenario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
there's something about Maine, I feel like, other having not read other state books, let me put that out there
Yeah,
for anyone that
yeah.
might be like, well, in this state, um, I feel like this, Maine really was like
Yeah,
something about that record, keeping that
yeah, I
record.
do, I agree with you. And certainly we look at a lot of quilt books and quilts in museums, and we see, maker unknown, maker once known, anonymous. But I also think that, and I'm not saying like this is a bad thing, but I also think that like in publishing books, particularly for state documentation, and I realize this is not a documentation book, but the other documentations for states, I feel like you kind of cherry pick the ones that are either like really fantastic representations or that there is good documentation on. So, um,
That true,
mm-hmm.
true. But I feel like this book is so overloaded with quilts. Like, more than I think any other book we've ever looked at, it is packing in so many in here. And I
Mm-hmm.
understand this is not all Maine states quilts.
Mm-hmm.
There's other Maine institutions. Um, but I don't know. I still feel like it's a lot to have
The
provenance for.
Maine State Museum, from what I can tell, just has a really phenomenal collection of quilts, I think. And, in terms of curating the exhibit that this book is attached to, I mean, I think that they really chose some wonderful examples. And, I think they were very, for whatever reason, whether it's been the donation or the acquisition of these quilts, or people from Maine just do a good job of keeping names and stories alive. I don't know. Maybe it's a cultural thing with Maine. I've only been to Maine one time. I do know some people from Maine, and they are quite the storytellers. So, it could be cultural. People like to kind of perpetuate information, in stories, and Maine just, they have that attached to their quilts. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to where's my finger? I'm going to share my screen here because the quilt on 155 is on their catalog. Um,
And that is a
so
very cool quilt. I really like
yeah,
this one.
so are we getting this okay?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so let's look at, it's funny, I was just up in Vermont. While Stephanie was gone, there was a part of me that was like, well, what am I gonna do with myself? Like, I don't have, and luckily my other BFF that lives in Virginia, she out of nowhere was just like, hey, I'm gonna go to Vermont with my daughter for a few days. Do you want to come and meet us up there? And I was like, you know what? Yes, I do. And we went to the Shelburne, and it was really cool. But I feel like this is a quilt that she would really appreciate because she is living that plant life. Like,
Yeah.
she's turned her backyard into this like insane garden, and it's beyond. But yeah, this thing is really really cool. And this is Memory Bouquet Quilts with Additions by Annie L.H. Mason Bates from Dexter, Maine, 1931. And it said Annie Mason Bates was the daughter of Mary Walton Mason. Annie's quilt is based on the memory bouquet patterns designed in 1930 by Evelyn Folland, whose work was distributed by Kansas City Star newspaper. Folland's memory bouquet included 20 flowers, each alone in a bowl,
Ike,
ikebana style.
Ikebana. Yeah, it's
Ikebana style.
like Japanese flower arranging.
Oh, mm-hmm. Annie Bates used all but the holly in her quilt. The hand embroidery around each applique motif is astonishingly consistent with and well executed. When Annie made the quilt, her widowed mother was living with her and her husband. Both women were skilled needleworkers. Many of the floral designs differ from those of Memory Bouquet. It is possible that the two worked together and that one or both designed the extra flower motifs. Annie died in 1981. She and her husband Carl had no children, and the quilt passed to a neighbor and friend. This is a lot of information to have about a quilt,
Yeah.
even a quilt from 1931, let
Mm-hmm.
alone if the stuff they have on some of the older stuff in the collection. Um,
And it
but
looks like
yeah,
the
it was
it looks like the accession number or the catalog number for this quilt is 2009. So assuming
mm-hmm,
that the neighbor slash friend is the one that donated it to the museum or that they acquired it from,
mm-hmm,
that person had it for a while. Um,
mm-hmm,
and so, yeah, I mean, I again go back to the fact that when people care about stuff, you know, they and then when it has like a meaning to them, and that's kind of part of that story aspect. Yeah, they save information.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
This is a really
Yeah.
pretty quilt too, and I think that it. I think the picture here in the Maine State Museum website, it looks like brighter than it does in the book.
Mm-hmm,
I'm sure that's because of photography and stuff. It looks like it's in really really good condition. No,
mm-hmm,
those fabrics are bright. So,
mm-hmm. Yep. And then of
um,
course, moving on, we get into the bicentennial quilts.
well, before that, the let's see, the song quilt on page 156. So it talks about it on 156.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm trying to think. I think the picture of it's like a few pages away. I think. Um, it's in the gallery, I guess.
Oh.
Where'd it go? Ah, yeah, here it is. It's on page 167. I thought this one was fantastic. I like, and some of them I looked at them and went like, "What?" I can't even imagine like what that's supposed to be.
All right, let's see if
um,
they've got it on here.
and the answers are here. Um, I'll be honest, like I think most of these songs I didn't even like know.
No,
So,
it's not in. It's not on here.
um,
All right, I'll stop sharing for the moment.
but anyway, I just thought that was so interesting. Like the quilt's winner was the person who guessed the greatest number of songs. I what a interesting contest, and I guess that kind of stuff. You know, they had
Mm-hmm.
interesting contests back in the early 20th
Yeah,
century. So I just thought that was so interesting.
you're right. Our contests aren't anywhere near as interesting.
No, I remember when I was a kid, and to some degree, it probably some of my memories also come from like television from the 50s and 60s because I watched a lot of that when I was a kid. Um, that idea of like housewives entering contests where they write a jingle for a commercial or things like that. I feel like people did a lot of that in the early to mid 20th century. And I guess just our cultural changes, that kind of stuff is just not done anymore, or not as prevalent. But I don't know that I've ever heard of a quilt like this where people had to guess what it was, and then whoever guessed the most won. Like, I just think
Yeah,
that's so
I guess
interesting.
one of the equivalents today was it seems to be gaining popularity to make quilts blocks based off of book covers
Ah, yes.
and book spread.
Yeah, well,
So I could
didn't
see,
Quilt Folk do? Wasn't it Quilt Folk
yeah,
that did
hmm
they did a
yep.
literary series?
So I could see reviving that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, maybe for anyone listening that's involved in quilt shows, like maybe that should be,
Yeah. Yeah,
like a
yeah, yeah.
contest at a quilt show. I know Esther just attended the Maine State Quilt Show, so
Yeah, maybe. Well, and
that's
like people come out in droves for things. Perhaps all correct answers would get somebody entries into a drawing or something like that. So I feel like unless you were very obscure, probably lots of people can figure out. AI can figure it out. I don't know. So yes, now on to the bicentennial.
Let me see if if the online has this one here.
Well, while you're looking at that, I love how she says here, the this is on page 156. The 1960s and 70s revival was also a romantic look back at the country's founding, but against the backdrops of political turmoil and a multitude of artistic movements. So absolutely. The result was as much Holly Hobbie as it was Peter Max. It looked to the past through its own filters and celebrated with its own joyful, jazzy color palettes. And that is absolutely true. I think so many probably misconceptions and myths about quilts and the colonial era in general, and like old things came about in 76 because you kind of you did have people looking at the past through this 1970s lens, which was, you had disco, you had all this political stuff, you coming out of the civil rights movement, you've got like culturally, you've got like all kinds of different things. And I collect, if you guys didn't know, I collect bicentennial era stuff. So bicentennial fabrics, I have a few bicentennial quilts. This one is actually older, although so yeah, and it's you look at the stuff and you're like, oh my God, it's ridiculous. There's nothing reproduction about it. It's all very like funky and weird and yeah.
Polyester.
Uh-huh.
Esther just said at Maine Quilts, we had two similar exhibits of two challenges. One was guess the song and the other was guess the idiom.
Oh, guess the idiom. I like that one. Okay, so is this a Maine thing? Guess the song?
I mean, if not, maybe they're just keeping that alive.
Yeah.
They all read Laurie's book.
Seriously. Well, I consider myself corrected. I mean, I sat here and said, as we get into the 20th century, it seems like Maine quilts are starting to look similar to, nationwide quilts, but perhaps there are still some Maine specific things.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I love about a lot of bicentennial quilts, and here in Littleton, Massachusetts, I had gone one day down to the Historical Society, which is right down the street, to see if they had anything in their collection. And they had some ephemera of a quilt show that a couple of gals had there of like their antique collection quilts. But they had the show, I think, back in maybe the early 90s. I don't think they're with us anymore. But anyways, one thing they had there was a puzzle of a quilt, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, wait a minute. And apparently women in the town got together and made a bicentennial quilt that they then photographed and made into a puzzle. I don't know where the quilt is. I half me was like, it's kind of weird that you guys have the puzzle but you don't know where the quilt is. But it had a bunch of like, town buildings on it and things like that. And that's one thing that I really love is like they almost become like little like historical maps.
Yeah, and
like when you're a tourist and you go to places and they have those little maps that show these little buildings that have like historical significance. And look, this one's got an eagle.
Find me a bicentennial quilt that doesn't have an eagle. Well, you can find them. They're out there.
This is a pretty badass eagle, though.
Yeah, it's a nice embroidery. It's the bicentennial quilts that are most interesting to me are these little community quilts. Certainly, there were some there were some communities that made like stunning quilts. There's one, and I'm blanking on what the town or locality was. I want to say might have been in the Pacific Northwest. But it was just like a stunning quilt. But most of them are a lot like what you see here on page 157 and what you're showing on the screen. They're sometimes a bit naive. Sometimes, they're very straightforward. They're blocks. And they depict things in the town, and it's often sometimes it's like events or history, but most often it's buildings. And yeah, I mean it's like this just sense of community pride and. Like you're saying, that kind of map, it's like that I don't know what the word is, like the this thing was here,
Well,
Um,
it's a great explanation example of when you're saying quilts are documents.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
because it's literally documenting a town's history or, historic. But like this one, like the renderings here are gorgeous.
Yeah, this one and this is the Maine bicentennial, which I guess would have been 1985. So
Almost.
I guess did Maine become a state in 1785? I guess. um, this one,
Yeah.
this is a more sophisticated quilt, I think.
Mhm.
But also, yeah, it's still again showing these important landmarks, and I had actually run across this one, I think, when I was researching some bicentennial quilts. And I kept getting excited because I would see all these lists of things like in the newspapers and stuff. And I'd be like, oh man, look at this. And I'm like, oh, it's the state's bicentennial, not the country's bicentennial. And then I thought, well, there's another road to go down, is to look at some of these state bicentennials, because there's only so many of them. I mean, we're getting closer to more states being able to have a bicentennial, but this kind of compressed time period of the 70s and 80s, where you have not just the nation's bicentennial, but the states also. I mean, it's like the 13 colonies and stuff in New England and some of the southern states, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're also an interesting thing. And I think what I've also noticed about some of the state projects, they do tend to be a little more sophisticated. I'm not to say all of them. I mean, some of them are also very straightforward, blocks. But I feel like I've seen more like this one, that we're looking at here on page 159.
Mm-hmm. And then just because it popped up here, this little Girl Scout quote is really
Yeah,
adorable.
I thought that one was really cute too. I like the back of it. It's got the troop number.
Yeah, were you a Girl Scout? I was not.
I was a Brownie Scout, although my mom led a Girl Scout group. She and her friend were Girl Scout leaders when I was little.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Esther reminds us that in the 1700s, Maine was still a part of Mass. So yeah, I think it was that like 1885 that Maine became its own
okay.
state.
Yep.
And I actually think it was, if I remember, it might have been Laurie in that interview, that radio interview. I believe she might have mentioned that in
Mm-hmm.
that interview. So yeah, I don't know if this
Um,
was supposed to be an eagle. It kind of looks like it.
I think it is.
Um,
Bless those Girl Scouts.
yeah. So because we do need to keep it a little tight tonight,
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking we might want to jump to chapter 8 after at least we definitely need to mention, because it's always important, of the AIDS quilt, the AIDS Memorial Quilt Project
Yeah,
on page
absolutely.
160. Um Sadly, let me stop sharing so I can get bigger, because this one is not part of Maine State Museum. But this project comes up in all the time,
Mm-hmm.
in all kinds of books that we read, in pop culture, art, all kinds of things. People are constantly referencing um, the AIDS Memorial Quilt, which this is obviously just a tiny chunk, and this one is various makers and locales, 1996. Um, Courtesy of the Names Foundation AIDS Memorial Quilt Block 4,638.
Yeah.
Each panel of the AIDS Memorial Quilt measures 3 feet by 6 feet. I'm sorry, 8 panels are combined to form a block. Over 2 dozen Mainers are commemorated on the quilt, which is too large to be displayed in its entirety. The panels are as varied as the individuals they memorialize, and the panel in the upper right was made in memory of Maynard Glenwood Randall. Um, have you ever seen any of it in person?
I have. In fact, I helped take it down
Oh,
in QuiltCon in Pasadena, California, and I think that was it 2016 maybe. Um, they had a section of the AIDS quilt, and I want to say it was like maybe 9 of these panels, and they are
mm-hmm.
enormous. They are enormous. So they have kind of like a heavy backing and then the pieces are the panels are applied to them, and you know a lot of contributions to the AIDS quilt blocks are people who have never quilted. So you've got stuff glued on. You've got stuff like some of them are very heavy. You've got clothing and memorabilia of some of the people that are being honored. You've got like a lot of stuff, and they're, just to sit and look at them and to think like people really kind of stretch themselves out of their box. I mean, you could tell like people that probably just didn't even know the first thing about quilting, but they needed to commemorate, their loved one or their friend, and it's just heart-wrenching to read the things that they wrote and the way that they would put things together in what they felt was a meaningful way. It's very, very emotional. Also, they're very heavy, of course, and this is terrible. They don't smell great. I don't know if it's...
I mean, humans don't in general.
Well, but I'm sure it has to do with the fact like they have been everywhere and they're folded up kind of, I mean, they don't fold up well. They don't fold up like a quilt. They kind of fold up into this like heap, this giant heap. And it has to do probably with the way they're stored and they travel and stuff. But yeah, I kind of smelled like, I don't know, cigarette smoke and old decrepit warehouse.
You also have to consider if people are using clothing.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Clothing. I mean, absolutely. There's a lot of reasons, but I just remember like when you work QuiltCon and your takedown crew, I've always done takedown when I volunteered because setup crew has to get things straight, like hung straight. And I'm like, I can't do that. Takedown, you still get to handle the quilts and look at everything, but you don't, it's more about just being protective of the quilt and getting it back in its container or whatever. But these were like, I mean, I literally was like holding the thing up while they actually had to use cable ties to hang them on these giant frames, because you can't hang them like a regular quilt. Right. They don't have a sleeve. I don't even know, like, it would have to be something really heavy duty to put through there. So yeah, you can see this one, it's got like grommets, because I think that in some cases I think these things are literally like painter's tarps or something. It was kind of, I can't remember if it was like a canvasy kind of stuff, but yeah, it's got the grommets, and those they put those like big chunky cable ties through, and you had to cut all the cable ties, and then and I'm going like, I'm the only one holding this thing, it's shoving me to the ground.
I do really love the fact here that Laurie points out on the 161, bottom of the first not full paragraph, that it remains the largest community art project in the world.
Yep. And you think about the other things that came after it, like, the Grenfell Towers quilt, and, all of the, I mean, I think about any major catastrophe that has happened in our world and in our country. I thought of Grenfell Towers because I actually saw Grenfell Towers when I was in England. But, people are drawn to making quilts to commemorate, and because it's just there's a certain something about making a quilt and then using it to commemorate or to
therapeutic.
Yeah, well, the therapy of it, but also like the that I was here. I think in a lot of cases you look at the names and you think some of these folks, at the time that they died, were potentially ostracized by their bio family. May have had like a really hard life just socially because they were gay, and this may be like the only place that they're documented, and that as outside of like, I mean, we understand modern times, census, all that stuff, you're on this, but just like they always say like if you could still speak a person's name, they never die, and I think that this says a lot of that. So yeah.
Esther pointed out that there's a current quilt project to draw attention to the current people in the USA that are being disappeared. And
Yeah.
if that word feels awkward to you, it's on purpose, because other words get flagged on the internet. So
Yeah. There was also recently the trans lives quilt. That was kind of similar, the way that they created quilts and you know, brought them to a protest demonstration in DC. So yeah. I know we wanna keep moving, but I can't not point out the 2 bicentennial quilts that are on pages 163 and 164, because these are something. Well, it's all one quilt, I think. Yeah, this is the 163 is the right.
yes,
Yeah,
it's a chunk of it.
yeah.
I'm
163
sad
is a
that
detail.
it's 164 and 5 that you see the whole thing, and I'm bummed that it's really not a good photograph. It's blurry.
Yeah, but
And
looking
it's
at it,
not
I'm
the
like,
Maine State Museum either.
this thing is so very cool looking. It is just so interestingly designed, and I mean, we only have so much detail picture here on 163, but it does look like the needlework is pretty good. So yeah, and 89 documented makers. I mean, holy Moses. To have that many people involved in a project and have it come out looking this gorgeous, it just boggles my mind. You know, that's not an easy feat to get that many hands and not, you know, and have something that is what appears to be very structurally sound. I guess it's yeah. So, and now before we move on to some of the other, let's make sure I didn't have anything else in here. I gotta say, the pictures on 162, those ribbon quilts components, those are very cool. Those are really cool. Yeah, we don't have to get into details about the ribbon quilt, although it's another, you know, demonstration type thing. And I think they were very cool. So are we ready to talk about Maine quilts of today?
Oh, I have to wait, one honorable mention here. I tried to look for this on the Maine State Museum's collection site and they didn't have it.
Oh, but the picture of the lady.
Yeah, on 171, we have a photograph here of Etta Mary Clark Spearin Page with a quilt. And it's a glass plate negative by an unknown photographer, Guilford, Maine, circa 1915. And it said, in 1908, Ida made a quilt in the rail fence or fence post pattern. She used velvets and velveteens, and her rich quilt won first prize at the something county fair.
Piscataquis.
Piscataquis. There you go. That almost sounds like platypus. Her grandchildren recalled playing with the quilt many years later until it was tattered from use. The pattern was apparently one of her favorites, as she made a second rail fence quilt out of silk. So here is the second one out of silk. But I was trying to find this because look at this photo of her. Isn't she the cutest?
I know, and I love the fact that she did what we all try to do in photographing our quilts, is to get them well lit with a background that isn't problematic. And she looks like either, I'm guessing that the 2 spots where the quilt is touching that background sheet, it looks like they're probably pinned, like safety pins or something, unless there's somebody standing back there pinching, like holding the core. I don't know. But yes, like, this is a fantastic picture. I agree. And it is a shame that we couldn't find it.
I'm going to let everyone know, in case you're ever out in the world antiquing or something, I really have a thing for old photographs with quilts of them. So I do have a collection. Oh, I forgot about this one. On 172 is the poultry ribbon quilt.
Oh yes, I forgot about that one too. Yes, I thought that one was hilarious.
Can you read the details on that one while I'm showing it?
Sure. So this is page 172. Poultry ribbon quilt, Helen Stockman Merrill of East Auburn, Maine, circa 1910. 76 by 70 and a half inches. It is at the Maine State Museum. The top of this quilt is made from poultry ribbons. Nellie Merrill, her mother Ella Noble Niles Stockman, and her paternal grandmother Elmira Davis were all active in the Maine State Poultry Association in the early decades of the 1900s. It is possible that the women and their friends won all the ribbons used to make this quilt. Nellie may have augmented family prizes with surplus ribbons from the Poultry Association. You know, it's like... Yeah. I would assume
it's also like, what are we going to do with all these ribbons?
Yeah, I'm sure everybody had chickens back then. And, you know, when you talk about state fair kind of, you know, and that sort of, you know, 4-H, all those kinds of things, like there's opportunities to win ribbons a lot at certain points in our history. And yeah, I thought this was so fantastic. And some of, I mean, she has this detail in here and it's got a chicken on it. So yeah, that's pretty delightful.
So one thing that I think is very interesting, you know, we get into chapter 8 here, is a lot of other books that we've been reading, other than with the exception of probably the To Honor and Comfort, because we were dealing with a lot more modern quilts in that book. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting that this book really brings it full circle by making sure to discuss contemporary quilters at the end. So like the first person, and doesn't just discuss them, like it fully highlights them to the point where, you know, they get to have kind of in like a, you know, a general kind of artist statement here. And the first one here, I know, Wendy Reed, and it's interesting that one of the first quilts shown here, and the thing that stinks is that like all of these for the most part are going to be like the collection of the artist, so they're not going to be like online for me to search for you. But this first one here by Wendy Reed, we've seen already in Portable Patchwork.
Yeah, I was going to say it was in Pam's book, wasn't it? Because it's
because Wendy loves to make quilts in the potholder style. And this one is a Maine Heritage Quilt from Bath, Maine, 2005, 85 by 72. And it says, Wendy Reed prefers the potholder method of quilt construction. She gives her potholder quilts culinary names. This example uses traditional as well as new applique patterns, all of which relate to life in Maine. I thought that was...
Yeah, and I love this one. I wish... I can't remember how detailed, because I didn't pull out Pam's book, but how detailed the pictures were. The picture in Pam's book was, but I would like to see this quilt in person because it looks like it's got some really fun appliques and stuff on it.
And you will get to meet Wendy at seminar in Portland.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to meeting some of our Maine friends.
I thought this one too on 178 was just incredible.
Yeah, that one is very cool. Also, I not to give short shrift to 176, that floral quilt by Pat Burns. That was it's, you know, it's in the garden maze setting. I thought it was pretty cool too. Yep. Okay, so the Point Cross River Northwest, that's Gail Frost and Duncan Slade. I think there's more of their quilts in here too, right? They're yeah.
Yep, they're
the crocodile on page 180 and 181. Wow. I had like my nose right up to the picture, and I'm like, okay, I see things in there kind of like a circly thing that I was like, that kind of looks like a cave facet fabric, or maybe not, but I'm looking and I'm like, you can barely see the transitions between the fabrics. She's done such an incredible job with this collage, and there's a number of quilters that make these, and I think, is it Laura Heinrich or something?
Laura Heine?
Heine, is that her name? She does, and I know my mom has one of her patterns, and she does this. And I want to say one of your girlfriends that you retreat with is I don't know if she teaches it, or is it Michelle? She teaches it and does those. So I remember, I've seen many different of hers, but this is, like I'm speechless. This is amazing. And it's huge. It's 22 feet long or wide.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah, I feel like many of these quilts, or I mean, all of these quilts are fantastic, but many of them are just really striking. And yeah, modern Maine quilters have really got it going on.
Yeah, I have. Oh my God, I chuckled when this one on page 195, which is made from the Jane Stickle quilt.
Dear Jane. Yep.
Except, Wendy called it half-baked Jane. So,
oh yeah, I forgot this one was a Wendy one. And then the one on the facing page is the pan blackened quilt, because she used the black edging in. And I love the back of it too. I think the back of it's really cool. So one thing that I noted in here that I really loved what she said is on page 184, and it's the bottom paragraph. It starts off, quilt groups in the 1800s tended to be ladies' benevolent societies whose members quilted. In the late 1900s and early 2000s, they instead became quilting groups that also did benevolence work, as women learned the joy of creating quilts, but also that of learning together, sharing, and creating community. Oh, I love that. I just like...
Now, the first place my brain went to was, ladies' benevolent society. Are there ladies' malevolent societies?
Malevolent societies. Well.
Yeah, like are there, like, is that why we have to distinguish? Like,
well, I don't know. Stitch and Glitch might be a ladies' malevolent society.
Yeah, like I mean, like, that's lovely, but like I kind of like, I want to hear about the malevolent stuff.
Malevolent society. Wow. And in the same vein, as we go to page 187, this bottom part here says, people say it's just a quilt, but that's not true. Manton says it's more than just a quilt. It's comfort, it's warmth, it's a superhero cape if you're a child, it's a tent you can hide under when things are too much. It keeps me giving. I could stay at home and do so much more, but I pick up my stuff and go to the quilting group. Why do I do that? I'm more inward than social, but this is a story about women. Women help themselves while staying connected, and so on. And I'm like, that also, I mean, it kind of made me cry a little bit. I'm feeling, I don't know, a little weepy today for some reason. And as I was reading that, I was like, oh my God, this is why quilts are documents, but they also have like this really, really interesting power. And it's kind of one of those, like, if you know, if you've quilted or stitched yourself out of a bad spot, if you've used needlework to get over or through something really tough, I mean, this should resonate with everybody. So I really liked where she went with this and these quotes.
Esther said that she would join a ladies' benevolent society. Esther, maybe we should start one. I feel like in today's world, there are many reasons to start a ladies' benevolent society.
Yeah, I think a ladies' malevolent society would just be about, like, it's not like we're really trying to make bad things happen, but it's like, get with the program or we will make bad things happen to you.
And there's snacks.
At my last corporate job, I had a couple of friends there that they're much younger than me. They were young women, not too long out of college, maybe in their mid-20s, late 20s. And, I realized at that time in your life, you're kind of, you're still finding your way. And I remember one girl in particular was just having a horrible time dating. She was using the dating apps. She would go on dates. And I feel so bad for her because she would come and she would tell us. And it was like, it broke my heart. I was like, dude, like these guys you're connecting with are just awful. And I said, look, if these dudes keep this crap up, you tell them that your friend Stephanie has the handbag of harm and she's going to come whack them upside the head with her purse.
I like the handbag of harm.
So the handbag of harm is
you're gonna whack them upside the head with your handbag full of purse snacks.
Oh, and the brick that's in the bottom of it like that. So every
And
lady in the Malevolent,
Esther, totally. Pam would totally join that too.
the Potholder Ladies Malevolent Society, yes. And we all carry a handbag of harm. So the other thing I loved in this chapter is about this community quilt for Lewiston, Auburn. And towards the end of the section, it says, Green Dot members and supporters, made this quilt. The quilt includes the motto, no one can do everything, but everyone can do something. Mm-hmm. Kindness counts. I think that's, I love that. That's a sentiment, that's the kind of thing you want people to think about. Be a good citizen, contribute. You don't have to do everything. You just have to do one little thing, and it's all of those little things add up if we come together as a community. So I really like the message in so many of these quilts.
Well, and I think your point there about that it's a community, there's pieces and parts that come together. I think that's a good note to end on.
If I may.
Don't cry.
One last note on page 190. I love this quilt. And I love what the maker did. It's Judy Roche, where she writes the little thing on the back side. I think that is so brilliant. And what this quilt reminded me of was I saw some really cool 100-day projects at Festival of Quilts. And, this of course is a whole year, and it's more of a diary. But yeah, my wheels are turning, having seen some cool stuff, which I will eventually show on my stream, from Festival of Quilts, and then seeing this one, and then seeing what she did with her little diary notation. Oh, my wheels are turning. So inspiring.
This was 2016 to 2019, and it said the bright quilt holds a secret. Every day when Judy Roche finished making a block, she wrote the date on the back of it, along with a comment about the day's activities. The quilt is in effect a diary quilt, an account of a year in the life of a Maine woman in early 21st century.
I love that. Quilts are documents. I mean, turn your quilt into a diary. Yes, please. So. And so as we end, I wanted to also note Jennifer Neptune's work. And page 215, remember how I was really trying to wrap my head around the Wabanaki, the silk ribbon embroidery? I think that this picture really is helpful because you can see how the ribbon is sort of manipulated into these shapes. So I really like that she included that close-up. So I gotta say, this has been a great book.
It really has.
It really has.
It really has. I always get a little sad when we end a book because it's it's like becoming a part of you and getting to know people. And it's funny because we've read books that have been around about one particular person, like Tallulah Bottoms there.
Yeah. Oh.
And boy, do we need some tissues through that. And then other books here we get to know a whole huge swath of people, and in this particular instance multiple communities and things of Maine. And I have to say, a lot of these books, when I bought them, I didn't necessarily buy them ever with the intention of reading cover to cover. It was mostly just this book has some things about bicentennial quilts, read that chapter, kind of a thing.
And I think that's what most of us do.
Yeah, and there's really definitely something to be said for reading cover to cover and really deep diving into whatever that I'm looking kind of at other things that we've read here and
yeah. And I also have to say from the perspective of so many of the authors that we have read are people we know, and or people that for instance, Tallulah Bottoms, Nancy Lou Burdick is deceased, so we did not have the option of being able to talk to her, but she was friends with our friend Mary Kay, and Mary Kay was able to tell us some a little bit about that time period when Nancy Lou was writing. And I just I think investing in books is so important to me, and books are like my second most important thing in my life. Not going to tell you what's first because I don't want to make anybody jealous. But but I think that you almost like, I mean, out of respect for the author, I know how much work goes into these, and you know, I know time is so premium for all of us, but it's a good thing to read these books and to really see, you know, all of the work and effort that went into it. So, you know, just as a nod to the author.
And to sit here and discuss them, because we pull in so many other things when we do different experiences and different insights and knowledge and
and our dear friends tell us things. I mean, I always love, you know, the comments, because you guys help us understand sometimes what we are like, especially this one is going like, huh?
Well, y'all, I hope you plan to be here at least for part of the day on Saturday at 2 for a Stitch and Glitch. Steph's going to tell us. I'm not going to do any talking. I'm just going to, I don't know what I'm going to work on in this moment, but I'm just going to let her go. I might even turn off my camera.
Maybe it won't.
Just, yeah, maybe it's just the Stephanie. Well, like, why? Because you need to see my response to everything. Like, but we've got that. And then if you didn't happen to watch them, Stephanie and I did record 2 videos that aired while she was away. One is an auction review of some recent stuff. I actually have some of it sitting next to me. And the other one is a recent exhibit that was at the New England Quilt Museum. And those were really fun, and you should go watch those. And make sure to do all the liking and sharing and subscribing. Yeah, because we got to get this thing rolling here.
Yeah. Our 2-year anniversary is coming up in a few months. Can you believe it? Yeah, you guys have been tolerating us for a good 20-some months now, almost.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. Alrighty, y'all. With that,
we'll see you soon. And definitely, if we don't see you again this week, be sure to mark your calendar so that you don't miss our interview with Laurie, because you surely will want to see and hear and probably ask her questions, because she is a fantastically fun person.
That's true. All right. Good night, everybody.
Bye.